Ever wonder why some businesses seem to, grow explosively while others just feel stuck, even when they're working incredibly hard? It often comes down to fixing the wrong problem. Today, we're going to cut through some of that noise. We're exploring the single most important triage question for pretty much any business. Is your biggest challenge right now supply or is it demand?
That really is the crux of it, isn't it?
Mm.
Businesses, they typically only have one of these two core problems at any given time. Either you don't have enough customers knocking on your door, or you don't have enough capacity, enough stuff, enough time, enough people to serve the ones you do have. And what's really critical, I think, is understanding you truly never have both problems at the exact same moment. It's always one or the other that's the real bottleneck.
Right. So our mission today is to help you figure out which problem you might actually be wrestling with. And, maybe more importantly, how to approach fixing that specific problem with, laser focus. We'll look at why zeroing in on that one thing makes all the difference, using some real-world examples that honestly might surprise you.
Okay, let's unpack this. So let's start with defining a demand problem. What does that actually look like? Well, it's when you have the space, you have the capacity, but just not enough customers filling it up. Think of a restaurant maybe with empty tables most nights, or a consultant with big gaps in their calendar, or, products just sitting gathering dust on shelves. You built it, but people just aren't coming.
Exactly. And then on the flip side, you've got a supply problem. This means you've actually got plenty of customers, maybe too many, but you just can't keep up. This looks like long waiting lists, having to turn people away. Maybe you can't make your products fast enough or take on new clients. They're lining up, eager to buy, but you physically can't serve them all. Okay, so how do you figure out which one you actually have? Is there a simple test? There actually is, and it's surprisingly straightforward. Ask yourself this. If you could magically double your ad budget or your sales outreach or your content creation tomorrow, what would realistically happen? Would you actually double your sales, or would you just create an unmanageable, chaotic mess? If doubling those efforts genuinely doubles your sales, well, you got a demand problem. You need more people knowing about you. But if doing that would just break everything, overwhelm your team, explode your wait times, ruin your quality, then congratulations, you've got a supply problem.
And understanding that difference is profound, really. The businesses that truly break through, the ones that scale successfully, they aren't just working hard. They're working hard on the right problem at the right time. It reminds me of that Warren Buffett quote, something like, "There's nothing worse than doing well with something that shouldn't be done at all." That insight is just so key for your focus. It tells you exactly where to put your energy and your resources for the biggest impact.
Okay, perfect. With those definitions clear, let's dive into some real-world scenarios. These really highlight how asking that triage question makes all the difference. So picture this. A consultant. They're completely booked out, maybe 3-4 months in advance. They're routinely working 60, maybe even 70 hours a week, totally stressed out. Yet, despite all that effort, all that busyness, their income has just plateaued. It's stopped growing. So what do they typically do in their, very limited free time? They try to generate more leads. They make more content, run more ads, network like crazy. They're trying to fix a demand problem.
They absolutely do not have.
Right.
This is such a classic supply problem. And 9 times out of 10, maybe more, it's actually a pricing problem hiding underneath. For a consultant stuck here, there are basically 3 main levers they can pull. First, and this one often feels the scariest, is to raise prices significantly. And I mean significantly, like maybe 50%, maybe even 100%.
Whoa, okay. But hang on. If someone's already completely swamped, feeling overwhelmed, isn't the idea of raising prices, potentially losing some clients, just terrifying? What if they lose too many? Couldn't that make things worse?
It's the immediate fear, absolutely. And it's totally understandable. Your gut says, don't rock the boat. But think about it logically. If you're truly supply constrained, meaning people are lining up, valuing your time, then pricing is one of your strongest levers. Let's do the math. If your price is double, and maybe, say, 30% of your clients decide, okay, that's too much for me, and they leave, you actually end up making more money while working with fewer people, significantly fewer. That suddenly frees up crucial time, mental energy, maybe even lets you sleep again. The second option is changing the service delivery model, moving away from just pure one-on-one. Maybe introduce a one-to-many program or a small group coaching model. Leverage your time better. And the third option, of course, is to hire and train other consultants. Basically, add headcount to increase your overall capacity.
Okay. So the main lesson there really seems to be that sometimes growth isn't about getting more clients at all. It's about getting better clients, or maybe just charging what the market is clearly signaling it's willing to pay. You might just be undercharging and getting in your own way. All right, let's pivot. Let's talk about a different kind of business, maybe a software company. Imagine they've got this amazing product. Customers genuinely love it. They stick around forever. Churn is practically zero. Sounds great, right? But the company just isn't growing. Revenue is flat. And the CEO, they're hyper-focused on building even more features, making the product even better.
Yeah, this is textbook demand problem territory. Often, if you dig into their financials, you might see they're spending, I don't know, maybe 5% of their revenue on sales and marketing.
Cool.
Meanwhile, their competitors, the ones who are growing, might be allocating 20%, maybe even 30% to customer acquisition. They've built this fantastic thing, this great product, but outside their small, loyal user base, almost nobody even knows it exists. They're essentially fighting irrelevance, not a product deficiency.
Okay, but isn't there a real risk there? If they pull resources away from product development and shift it all to marketing, won't they just fall behind their competitors on the feature front eventually? It feels, I don't know, a bit risky to stop focusing on what made them great in the first place.
It's a valid concern, definitely. It's all about balance. But the key indicator here is that zero churn. If customers aren't leaving, it means the current product is already delivering significant value. It's hitting the mark. So pouring more resources into adding, niche features that might not attract significant numbers of new users could be a misallocation. In fact, sometimes products can actually get worse with too many additions. They become bloated, complex, harder to use. The immediate high-leverage focus should probably be on letting more people know about the already great product they have, rather than constantly tweaking it in a vacuum.
Okay, interesting. Now here's a really tricky one. Think about a popular restaurant. They might have 2-hour waits on Saturday nights, absolutely packed. But then you walk by on a Tuesday afternoon and it's noticeably empty. Lots of open tables. So is this a supply problem or a demand problem? It kind of feels like both, doesn't it?
It really does feel like both on the surface. But when you peel it back, the core issue is often mispricing and misallocated capacity. The owner might be spending thousands on marketing and advertising, but all that's doing is unwittingly pushing more people into those already overflowing weekend slots, which ironically just creates longer waits and maybe even frustrates potential customers.
Right. So, okay, for that kind of peak time supply crunch combined with the slow periods, what are the actual solutions? How do you balance that out?
Well, there are a few good levers here. First, and most obviously perhaps, raise prices on your peak days. Friday and Saturday nights. Think about it. For a restaurant with maybe tight 10% profit margins, a 20% price increase on just those 2 peak nights could potentially triple the actual profit dollars you make from those sales. That could boost your overall weekly profit by, say, 1.5x just from adjusting weekend pricing. It's huge. And a side benefit is it naturally encourages some price-sensitive customers to maybe try coming on a Wednesday instead. It helps move demand. Second, you could offer some kind of premium option, maybe pay to skip the line, or reserve premium tables. That captures extra revenue from those willing to pay for convenience. And third, you could look at simply extending hours during peak demand. Staying open an hour later on weekends might significantly increase your serving capacity when you need it most.
That profit math is really eye-opening, just tweaking prices on peak times.
Yeah.
And I love that framing tip you mentioned earlier. Instead of saying weekends cost 20% more, frame it as weekdays are 20% less.
Exactly. People love feeling like they're getting a deal or a discount. It's psychology. So framing it that way can naturally help spread that demand throughout the week, aligning it better with your available capacity without making people feel penalized for coming on a busy night.
All right, let's shift to a scenario that's just pure supply constraint, no ambiguity. Think about an online store selling, say, home fitness equipment during the early COVID lockdowns. The home workout boom, sales suddenly go completely crazy, maybe 4x overnight. Sounds like every business owner's dream, right? Free money.
Right.
But their suppliers just cannot keep up. They're overwhelmed.
Yeah, a classic be careful what you wish for situation. Yeah. So despite selling out of literally everything they had, they maybe kept their ads running because, well, sales were booming. But that quickly led to shipping times ballooning from, say, a reasonable 2 weeks out to maybe 6, 8 weeks or even longer. Their customer service lines get completely jammed, angry emails pour in, social media explodes. This pure supply constraint was actually being made worse by their continued, almost reflexive focus on demand generation. They were pouring fuel in a fire they couldn't control.
Okay, so when you're in that situation, drowning in demand but desperately short on actual supply, what are the core solutions? What do you do?
2 main paths forward generally. First, try to sell something different. Something intangible, ideally, that doesn't have a physical supply constraint. Think about things like extended warranties, maybe affiliate deals where you sell other people's products that are in stock, or even services related to your core product. like home gym layout design, or maybe coordinating flooring installation, things that don't require you to ship a physical box. The goal here is to generate cash flow now, even when you can't ship your main product. That cash can then be used strategically, maybe even leverage with your suppliers, offering to pay them 20% more perhaps to get bumped up in their production queue. And the second path, of course, is to aggressively work on increasing your actual supply. This means serious investment in your supply chain. Finding and vetting multiple vendors, building redundancies so you're not reliant on a single source, maybe even exploring contract manufacturing options.
It really sounds like for businesses selling physical products, the supply chain isn't just part of the business.
It is the business, pretty much. If you have a great product or if you're brilliant at marketing, eventually supply will become your bottleneck. It's almost inevitable. Mastering that becomes the game.
What about a home services business? Let's say a plumbing company. They seem busy, right? Calendars full, vans are always on the road, technicians are working overtime. But somehow profits are getting squeezed. They're stagnant or even shrinking. The owner is probably convinced they just need more customers, or maybe they need to hire more technicians.
Ah, yes, the classic rock and a hard place scenario. It's incredibly common in trades businesses. But often the real problem isn't a lack of jobs coming in, or even necessarily a shortage of technicians, although that can be tough too. The deeper issue is often a supply problem, with sales skills within the existing team. Their plumbers are technically excellent, they fix the immediate leak or blockage quickly, but then they leave. They rarely offer additional valuable services. They don't check the other taps or the water heater or suggest a preventative maintenance plan or offer an upgrade to a better fixture. They're just fulfilling the specific job ticket they were given.
So the solution isn't necessarily about getting more calls booked. It's about getting more value out of the calls they're already running.
Exactly. The highest leverage move is often to teach those technicians simple, non-pushy ways to offer more value. Short, easy scripts for relevant upsells or cross-sells. Think about it. If you can get the same number of customers, served by the same number of technicians, to buy maybe twice the services during that visit, often with minimal extra time needed, you can dramatically increase your revenue and, more importantly, your profit from your existing capacity, your existing supply of technicians and vans.
And that unlocks the crucial cash flow, doesn't it? Once that average ticket value goes up significantly, then the business actually has the resources, the profit, to maybe afford hiring those extra technicians or to invest more confidently in marketing to get more calls. It solves the real constraint first.
Precisely. You fix the profit engine before you try to scale the operation.
Okay, here's a fascinating one I heard about. An enterprise software company, they were stuck at basically the same revenue level for years. Flatlined. Despite doing tons of product demonstrations, lots of activity, their immediate thought, we need more salespeople, let's double the sales team. They figured it was just a numbers game, more demos equals more sales.
Right, a very common reaction. But it turned out this wasn't really a problem of lead quantity or the number of demos being done. The deep underlying issue was actually a sales process problem. Specifically, they were consistently presenting the software's benefits to the wrong people within the client organization. They were running into what's called a principal-agent problem.
Ah, okay, maybe quickly unpack that for us. What does principal-agent problem mean in this kind of context?
Sure. So in this case, the principals,
Right.
let's say the building owners, the people at the top who ultimately pay the bills, they really wanted the cost savings the software could provide. That was their main incentive. But the agents, the building managers, the people on the ground who would actually have to use the software day to day and who were often the ones evaluating it during the demos, they didn't want the hassle of learning and implementing a new system. It just meant more work for them, potentially, without any direct benefit or pay increase. Their incentives weren't aligned with the owners.
Got it. So the sales team was pitching cost savings to people who cared more about avoiding extra work. So the solution wasn't just more demos or even necessarily different features, but changing who they were selling to, or at least how they framed the pitch to that agent, the manager.
Exactly right. The fix was to completely rescript the sales process. They shifted the focus away from just cost savings for the owner and instead highlighted how the software would make the manager's job easier, how it would streamline their workflow, maybe even give them better data to look good to their bosses. It was about elevating the manager's status and addressing their specific needs and concerns. Yeah. By redefining who the real customer was in that sales interaction and tailoring the pitch accordingly, they finally broke through that plateau. That relatively simple shift unlocked massive growth.
That's a great example of how the constraint isn't always obvious. Okay, one more. Let's talk about an online course creator. Maybe they have a genuinely great course, really high completion rates, students leave glowing reviews, it clearly works. But they're barely breaking even financially. They're convinced marketing is their biggest hurdle. If only more people knew about my course.
Yeah, and while marketing is definitely part of the equation, this often points back to a demand constraint, where pricing is the most powerful yet often overlooked lever, especially for digital products. Why? Because with a digital course, you essentially have zero marginal cost of delivery. Selling one more course doesn't really cost you anything extra, unlike a physical product or a service that takes your time. So raising prices significantly doesn't just increase revenue per sale. Crucially, it gives you much more margin to spend on acquiring customers through paid ads, affiliates, whatever.
Can you maybe paint a picture of how that plays out mathematically?
Sure. Let's say they have a course priced at, I don't know, $1,000, and they're struggling to make paid ads work profitably. Now imagine they raised the price to $3,000. Even if their conversion rate drops a bit, maybe sales volume decreases by, say, 15 or 20%, their actual revenue is likely to nearly triple almost overnight. And suddenly they have maybe $2,000 plus extra per sale that they can afford to spend on ads to acquire that customer. It completely changes the economics of customer acquisition. And then maybe they add an even higher tier version, a $10,000 coaching package or mastermind for a small segment of their audience. That can really skyrocket overall revenue and profit. Now, if raising the price just isn't feasible for some reason, then the focus has to shift to ruthlessly optimizing everything else for conversion. That means optimizing existing content for paid traffic, structuring landing pages purely for conversion, capitalizing on that very short window when a prospect is motivated. And sometimes, frankly, that means using an ugly landing page that converts like crazy rather than a beautiful, aesthetical, pleasing page that just doesn't get people to buy. You have to focus on what actually solves the constraint, getting the sale.
Wow. Okay, so going through all these examples, it really hammers home that core idea. It really is always either supply or demand acting as the primary bottleneck at any given time.
It is. But, and this is important, it's dynamic. It's like an accordion or maybe ping pong. As soon as you successfully solve one constraint, let's say you fix your demand problem, and suddenly you're flooded with customers.
Yeah.
Guess what? You've just created a new constraint, likely on the supply side. This back and forth, this ping-ponging between supply and demand constraints, that's actually the natural, healthy flow of a growing business.
Right. And this is where I think it gets really interesting and maybe where a lot of businesses get stuck long term. They might get stuck for years, not because they're necessarily doing something fundamentally wrong, but because they solved their previous constraints so well that they created a brand new, massive constraint on the other side, but they just didn't switch their attention. They kept working on the old problem, the one they already solved. And this brings us to maybe a deeper, more profound insight about how to manage this constant switching, this ping pong. It connects directly to the magic of, well, doing less, keeping things simple.
Exactly. Think about it with a simple analogy. If I suddenly threw 4 tennis balls at you all at the same time, you'd struggle to catch even one, right? It'd be chaos. But if I just threw one ball, nice and steady, you'd catch it easily, almost every time.
Yeah.
That's kind of a visual metaphor for business focus, trying to market 10 different benefits or pursue 5 different strategies simultaneously. It's like trying to catch 4 balls, but focusing intently on solving that one core constraint that's catching the single ball. It's achievable. It's effective.
That's such a powerful visual. It reminds me of Ken Segall, who worked closely with Steve Jobs on marketing at Apple. He wrote a book called Insanely Simple, and he talked about their guiding principle, the thing they lived by. Find the single most compelling point and communicate it in the most compelling way. Like the original iPod. They didn't list all the tech specs. The message was simply 1,000 songs in your pocket, bam. And achieving that level of clarity, that simplicity, actually takes way more work, more rigorous thinking than just throwing a bunch of features or benefits out there. Complexity is often just the result of lazy thinking or trying to please everyone.
Absolutely. And that discipline, that commitment to simplicity and focus, it really has to start right from the top. It needs to permeate everything the business does. Product development, marketing messages, sales conversations, even how you deliver your service or product. Look at a fast food place like Raising Cane's. You know, the chicken finger shop. Their menu is incredibly limited. They basically do one thing, chicken fingers, and they do it exceptionally well. That extreme focus allows them to optimize everything around that core offering. Sourcing, training, kitchen workflow, speed of service, everything.
So translating that back to the listener, for your business, right now, what is that one thing That single objective, that one outcome that, if it were truly achieved 12 months from now, would fundamentally change everything for the better. Identifying that becomes your most important objective. That's where your focus needs to be. So what does this really mean in practice?
Well, it means sometimes you have to consciously decide to let the little fires burn.
Mm.
You identify the single biggest lever, the solution to your primary constraint, and you commit your primary resources to that, even if it takes time, even if other smaller problems are popping up. You have to resist the temptation to pull resources away from the main objective to constantly fight those smaller fires, or to place lots of little bets hoping one pays off. Because that diffusion of focus, that's how businesses often stagnate. They die by 1,000 paper cuts, never achieving that breakthrough momentum because they're spread too thin.
You know, it reminds me of the difference sometimes described between Eastern and Western art. Western art often starts with a blank canvas, and the artist adds paint, layer by layer, building up the image. Eastern art, like sculpture, often starts with a big block of material, like jade, and the artist's job is to remove the excess, to chip away everything that isn't the sculpture, revealing the form hidden within. And maybe that's a good way to think about business strategy sometimes. It's not always about adding more stuff. Sometimes it's about deleting what sucks, removing the unnecessary complexity, simplifying, to reveal the core strength underneath.
That's a fantastic analogy. It perfectly captures it. Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter and Square, he has this great quote, "Perfect every detail and limit the number of details." Steve Jobs, again, famously said, "Focus is about saying no. It's about deciding which good ideas you're not going to pursue right now so you can excel at the truly great one. You simply cannot go deep. You can't achieve mastery when you're spread too thin across too many initiatives." The really outsized returns, the breakthroughs, they almost always come from that kind of hyper-focus.
We saw this play out vividly with a company we worked with that ran online games and activities for schools. They actually made the counterintuitive move to reduce the number of live calls they offered and intentionally cut back on the amount of content and resources inside their online community platform. Why? Because they discovered the number one reason customers were canceling their subscription was feeling overwhelmed. Too much stuff. So they realized their job wasn't just to provide value, but to provide the highest possible value per second in fewer total seconds. They stripped away optional calls, they reduced the number of downloads, simplified the app interface. They focused only on introducing what was absolutely required for the user to get the core promised result. And retention improved.
And the benefits of adopting this one-thing philosophy, this focus on the core constraint, are just immense across the board. You see increased efficiency because everyone knows the priority. You have fewer pointless meetings. Projects actually get completed faster because resources aren't fragmented. There's less noise and confusion for your team and for your customers. Communication becomes clearer. And critically, it gives you the bandwidth, the mental space, to truly perfect that single most impactful deliverable, whether it's your marketing message, your product feature, or your service delivery.
So really, this isn't just a tactic or a framework you use once in a while. It's more like a fundamental way of thinking about building and scaling a business. The most successful businesses seem to be the ones that get really good at this cycle. Accurately identify the current bottleneck, focus relentlessly on breaking through that specific problem, and then, once it's solved, immediately shift focus to find and attack the next one. So, wrapping up our deep dive today, we've really explored how crucial it is to identify your business's actual core constraint. Is it supply or is it demand? And understanding that solving the right problem, not just throwing effort at any problem, is absolutely critical for sustainable growth.
And we connected that directly to this incredibly powerful, almost countercultural idea of simplicity. The profound importance of focusing your energy, your resources, your thinking on that one thing that truly matters most right now. Removing the excess to reveal and then perfect your core offering.
So the question we want to leave you with is this. Looking at your business today, what is that one thing, that one outcome that, if it were true 12 months from now, would change absolutely everything for your business? And what core constraint, supply, or demand is standing in the way of achieving it right now?
Really consider that challenge. Because often, the path to massive, sustained growth doesn't lie in doing more things or working harder across the board. It lies in doing the right one thing, that single highest leverage activity, exceptionally singularly well.